You don't need special equipment or anything, you just need flour, water, and salt. I know when I first started, it was kind of like, you can make bread? Hi, my name is Edgar Cuarezma. I am the owner/baker of Amano Pan. I had gone to school for painting and drawing, just doing mostly portraiture and gallery work. In a way, the bread has now become my creative outlet. It just better represents what I'm seeking in terms of satisfaction in my creative process. I've been baking for about 10 years. I started doing it on my own, just out of the kitchen in San Francisco, and then started working in bakeries all over the country. I'm originally from Miami, so all my family and my closest friends are from there. And then I went to school in LA. That's where I majored in illustration. Then I went to Chicago afterwards and did the art thing there for a few years. Then moved to San Francisco. And then that's where I switched over to bread. And then that's where I got together with Aemi, who's now I'm married to. So, and then we went from there to Seattle, where Bernard was born. And then from Seattle, we tried moving to Chicago just to kind of like get a more affordable life or whatever. But then I ended up getting an offer to go to Spain. So we went over to Spain to help open up a kind of like a bakery pizzeria in the Basque Country. We were there for 6 months. Came back to Miami, kind of lived and worked there for a little bit, and then came out here to once again find a little more stability and affordability. The book that I started learning bread from was from the Tasahara bread book. You know, the directions were more like, mix these ingredients together. If it feels really dry, add a little bit more water. It had this very kind of like relaxing, zen, meditative quality to it that I really was attracted to. And even in San Francisco, I went to go stage for this baker who lived in a Zen Buddhist center. And he gave a kind of like a prayer and a thanks to the oven every time he would come in and before he started his bake. You know, it's not so much about whether you can follow instructions or not, it's whether you can just open yourself up for the process, because a huge part of making bread is being able to let go of how much control you have over it, because you really are just kind of creating this environment so that the bread can do what it would naturally do. I was coined the name Breadger, and for a while I kind of went by that and used that as kind of the bakery name. I wanted something that really did represent me, that was personally attached to, and at the same time, you know, could go beyond that and like kind of have like different layers to it. Amano I thought was like pretty appropriate because it encompassed, it's like a craft. It has, you know, like the Nicaraguan on the Spanish side, and then it also has kind of like my influences in there as well. Even like pan in Japanese is bread, also coincidentally enough. And there is a lot of that, you know, influence in there too, just like with combining like the Japanese like red bean filling and then putting them in a Nicaraguan pico. For a while, my idea for the logo was to have like kind of like the Buddhist circle. I collaborated with my wife to help me come up with the design. You know, it's her handwriting. I love her handwriting, and I knew I wanted that in there. The Zen circle became the wheat pattern with the hand at the end, and then my sister-in-law is a graphic designer, and she helped kind of polish it up. So I was just selling online, just maybe 1 or 2 customers. I think I like the idea of Zόcalo, you know, that it is very communal. There's a bunch of like different types of food trucks there. The support that I got from this place, it really enabled me, instead of just selling online to like a few people and, you know, actually taking it somewhere and, you know, actually allowing myself to think that it can grow past a certain point. The bakery that I envision, it's just more about accessibility. For the most part, everyone eats some variation of bread in whatever culture that they're in. I feel like to some degree it's been elevated to a point where it does become inaccessible to a lot of people. I found some parallels between that and the art world where, making art, you're only being able to sell to the highest bidder. I just feel everyone should be able to have access to really healthy, delicious bread, If most people are buying breads from the grocery store, those breads are gonna be mostly enriched white flour that's very processed and doesn't have a lot of the nutritional value, as you would get it from like a stone ground mill. They actually add vitamins and additives back into it because the flour itself is just devoid of all that. Where my breads stand out is that I don't use any of the white flour. I only use the stone mill bread flour that I get from the millers, so they're not able to remove all the bran and all the germ from it. Because a lot of the other breads you find, from start to finish, it might take, from the mix to the bake, as little as a few hours. When I mix the levain, I start mixing it at like around 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and then it's about 2 days after that the bread is done. It's like with any food that's fermented, you're making the body have better access to the nutrients. What makes it a sourdough is just the fact that it's made with a natural occurring yeast instead of the commercial yeast that come in those packets. Not only do you have a yeast culture, you have a bacteria culture, and then that in turn helps, leaven this bread through a much slower process, but because of that, you gain a lot more from it. The reason we're having so many issues with the gluten allergies and things like that is because the bread doesn't have time to break down, so the body just has a harder time dealing with it. So a lot of people with gluten sensitivities can actually have my bread. There's nothing more rewarding than pulling out a super awesome looking loaf out of the oven, and getting those smells. But everything leading up to it is just so much like, oh my God, is it gonna work this time? I've been doing this for 10 years and nothing has changed. It's the same process, it's the same anxiety. And it was the same when I was doing art. And it was just terrible because with art, it took me like 3 months to do like a painting. So it was just extended now, just reduced that entire process to like, a few days. So it works a lot better for me. Right now, my greatest accomplishment is in progress. Actually, they're both in progress. I would say raising a child and a family is pretty much an amazing feat that is just completely ongoing. And if I can get this bakery concept off the ground, that'll also be considered one of my greatest achievements.